So hello, welcome back to the 11th edition of airhacks. Yeah, almost 1 month again, and this time there are even more questions than last time. I think it will be a little bit more quiet, but the opposite is true. And yeah, let's start with the questions. First question, microservices and JavaE. So I spent some time on the JDK.io. I was 1 day in Copenhagen and also 1 day at the Oracle Dev Day and OOP in Munich. And I had questions like microservices and JavaE. And what I always see is like people are searching for something which is too slow or too inconvenience. And the last time someone mentioned, yeah, but WebSphere. Now, WebSphere is not a microservice. And I mean, the older WebSphere is true, but even WebSphere, Web Scalability profile, is very thin, very simple to install, and actually very fast deployment cycles. And this is very performant application server. So I think the times are over where the application server are thick and big. At least this is hard to find a big application server, and usually it's the fault of ourselves, of developers, that we develop too big applications which are actually too fat and the deployment takes too long. Okay, somehow related, I still heard 2 times actually at the OP and Copenhagen, Java is not suitable. Do you know anything more lightweight? And actually, this lightweight is really strange term, because I think what I also always ask, what do you mean by lightweight? Does your application server consume too much RAM? Does it consume too much CPU? Is the deployment slow, or what's the problem? Or is the installation complicated? And usually I don't get any answer. It's like, no, it's not lightweight. It's like, yeah, but what is it? Is it too slow, too big, download size too big? And actually there is no answer. So it's like, and the last time someone says PHP would be, for instance, lightweight for a microservice. And what's funny, I'm back from the airhacks, the special days. So I delivered microservice workshops and testing, and what was it? The third one I even forgot. And people ask me, yes, there were PHP developers who wanted to learn JavaE. I was like, oh, and why you are here? You are a PHP developer, and why you are in the JavaE course? And they told me, yeah, because it is really a mess. Larger applications are really a mess, and they would like to learn JavaE, and they really like it. So what's funny, out at the conferences, people refer to PHP as being lightweight or microservice enabled, and I see more and more PHP developers in my workshops. So something strange is going on. So if someone asks you about lightweight, ask the counter question: what's the problem? So define the lightweight, and then let's see which technology will fit into lightweight. Okay. So this is just 2 esoteric things, and I also released to the simultaneously to the Microservices workshop in Munich an application called Porcupine. Not application. This is a very thin library. You can actually go to GitHub to show you this. The internet is slow again. And what the Porcupine application does is it. What's the problem with the app? It is a threading library. It is based on concurrency utilities for Java. And what you get with this is injectable executor service. So what executor service is an abstraction from thread pool introduced in JDK 1.6 or even 1.5. And then go straight to the code. Then it is actually a very small application. It is also in Sonatype. So you can directly install it to your app, and what you see, this is there's just a few classes, and what you get with this is you can watch it in a Porcupine sample. It's also on GitHub, and basically what you can do. You can inject thread pools. So it looks like this. Add inject dedicated executor service. It is just the usual executor service, nothing special from Java. And with the light, you get this is the name of the executor service. It gets the name light, and the other one is heavy. So you get two configurations, two distinct thread pools. And what interesting is, what you also get for free is statistics. Is a different one. This one. You can inject then the statistics from the thread pool. So this will inject all statistics from the application, all the available thread pools. And what you can also inject, you can use the same qualifier as the previous one, and inject a dedicated statistics for your thread pool, coming as with or as JSON or XML. So these are just qualifiers. Dedicated is a qualifier. On either you can rely on conventions, or you can specify your own name if you like. And you can of course configure everything. So in the example here, I showed you how to configure such a thread pool. If you would like to have custom configuration, looks like this. It's like, I would like to configure the pipeline. So pipeline is the thread pool plus statistics and all the infrastructure. It says I would like to configure the heavy one, and this is actually the configuration. If you don't configure it, you get the default, and the default is depending on the number of cores. Okay, and why I did it? I use it for a very long time actually on my server, on my backend, and I just extracted it from the application, making it a little bit more cleaner. And it's okay, why not open source this? And we also discuss this a little bit on the Microservices workshop. And by the way, there's new date in May, if you like. Okay, so this was, oh, we could even try to launch it. Let's see whether it actually works. So I will try it on Whitefly. Also, I tested in Glassfish on Whitefly. And it should also run on Tommy if it supports Java 7. Let's see whether it works. If not, so this is, we can do something light, something heavy. So it takes a little while. Yeah, it was, you see nothing. So it was timeout. Oh, what I forgot to mention, what Porcupine also cares about the so-called back pressure. So you can define, what happens if the queue is overloaded. Should the task be rejected? Should the client be blocked? Or should exception be raised? And basically you can configure this per pool. And this is of course standard JDK 1.6 settings. So, and then we get the statistics object. As you can see, this is the pipeline light and the pipeline heavy. You can also get it as JSON, and you can get back what is actually working. Okay. What actually happens on the server. So any questions here? No questions. No questions. So next one. So this is a more interesting one. Leonardo V asked me, I think via email, I need to manage sessions to maintain information, and I think he would like to have something like overview of all sessions. So it doesn't like use the HTTP session, but something more broad. And the question is where to put information. And doesn't like to put information on the presentation side. And actually it wouldn't be even possible, because if you would like to see all logged in users, you would see in the app just the users belonging to the app. So what you could do, of course, you can use something like EHCache or Hazelcast to distribute the data across servers. You can put the information to database, and it's of course fine to have a singleton which caches the information. But if you would just have to see the logged in users per application, why not to use HTTP session or at session scope? It works perfectly. What I would do, I will disable clustering, because usually if you enable clustering for HTTP sessions, the replication happens asynchronously, and if it's asynchronously, it cannot be consistent. Either it is synchronous and consistent, or asynchronous and not consistent in the standard default Java configuration or J2E configuration. So, so what you can do, you can use token and store the information on a singleton, but then you have to know to be aware of cleanups or whatever. I would use singleton bean, which is bin managed concurrency. But you can use equally well application scoped bin, but then you cannot use schedulers and stuff like this. So the next question is how to migrate and test convoluted Swing projects to JavaFX. And not to JavaFX, but how to deal with Swing. So the problem, if you just the usual Swing application or the usual JavaFX application is not testable at all. And the problem is that people write all kinds of code directly to the view, and then you have to start the view in order to perform any tests. So what you can do, or what we actually did. So if you, I don't know whether I should do something with this. Wait a second. So if we create, let's say Java app, I don't even know, it's a long time ago, Java application. Let's do a Java application, UI. Let's see whether it still works. New. Perfect. JFrame. And let's say you would like to have a button, and you go to the source. As you probably see, is we have the button here, and the source is generated in the protected region. And the problem is, of course, you are now fully dependent on the generated code. So the question is how to separate this. And what you can do, if you have the button here, you could associate the button with the events with the code. Exactly. And there should be a listener code. And what I wanted to say is the following. You have to cleanly separate the generated code from the controller code. How to do this? So in the wizard, you can specify which method is going to be called in case someone pushes the OK button. And this method shouldn't be here, it should be outside the code. And it is going to be outside the code, it's just a usual method. And from this method, you should delegate the calls to a controller. And this controller becomes fully testable. So my last projects, Swing project, I think they were 2-3 years ago, were exactly that. So what we did, we always separated the generated code for our controllers. It was this generated code here, what we just did. Just forgot there was some, not binds, events, action, exactly. Action performed. Yeah, exactly what we did. So we get the method generated here. And in this method, you would say this controller dot save. So this class just translates between the Swing events to the high-level events on our controller was fully testable and easier to handle. And if something happened to the view, I don't know, it just was, it broke for unknown reasons, we just threw it away and we just redraw everything and delegate it to the calls. But there was no business logic here, and it worked perfectly even with non-Java programmers. So this was my last Swing project. So it's absolutely possible, and in larger project it will pay off. And in JavaFX land, I tried to do the same, and what happened is I proposed the project Afterburner, so you can download it. It works similarly with a little bit inversion of control. Okay, let's see. Still no. It could be that GitHub is down. Looks like. Because they don't have Porcupine, I think. Okay. So 6 also interesting questions. So someone uses Jersey library for REST implementation, and obviously Leonardo is using Tommy, which is a great application server. And now is the question, should it use built-in Tommy library or CXF? I assume from the client side to write system tests. And right now I'm in a whitefile project, and what I try to do, I try to use for system tests the same library as on the server. So I'm using REST Easy for system tests, but there is some issue with connection leaking, so I switched to Jersey. But I really try to use the same REST library on the client as on the server, and just to to have more realistic tests. And usually if I use Tommy, I would just use what what Tommy provides, and if I were using Glassfish, I'm using the libraries from Glassfish and the Whitefly from Whitefly. What I think it is not very reasonable, you know, to choose, for instance, I don't know, Glassfish and then replace Eclipse Link with Hibernate. Then I would rather use Whitefly and use the full stack Whitefly just to mitigate the risks and not playing too much with the infrastructure. Okay, the question number 7 is a classic one. Oh, I forgot to take a look at the chat. Here's nothing, and nothing here, and also nothing here. So it seems like you have no additional questions, not even on Twitter, which is good. So we will be probably even faster than last time. Okay, so I've been wondering about using OSGi for my startups. Could you give me your opinion about OSGi? So my opinion about OSGi is it is I think it was one of the most overused technologies. Right now it is a little bit more quiet with OSGi, and I cannot answer this question because it really depends what a kind of startup it is. If I would build clouds or infrastructure like a server farm or whatever, I would for sure consider OSGi or whatever custom technology. For business applications, server-side business applications, I don't see the huge selling point for OSGi. Yeah, for specific cases, I would use OSGi, but this would be not my choice, you know, for general business application. In my opinion, I strongly believe in it that for general business applications, enterprise applications, Java is the simplest possible, most productive choice, and but more general choice because it's based on JSRs, on standards, and therefore it cannot be perfect in all corners. So the question is, do you need a solution for a corner? Then choose a specific solution. If you're building a mainstream application, then Java is just perfect. Okay. Then a really interesting question. I have to admit, the first time I didn't even got what's the problem here. It's actually loosely Java EE related, but Java EE nicely solves the problem from Groovetex. So let's see. So Stack Overflow is working. What's impossible? Seems like GitHub is down. Can it be? So everything works, but not GitHub. So the question was like this. This is small. This is a question from Stack Overflow, and what I understood is the problem is a standard Java SE application, and this is time-derived attributes. It means there's a start time, and it asks several times, you know, get data as possible shipment name or whatever, and just creates dates over and over again. And the question is how to deal with this in Java EE. And I first didn't got the questions like what's actually the problem. And the problem is that someone tries, you know, to have multiple methods which operate on a date, and the starting date should be always the same. So this is actually milliseconds accurate. And the question is how to solve this Java EE. And the funny story is Java EE solves this beautifully. Why? You could use, for instance, request scoped and create the date per request once, and it would be reused, and then you have your starting points at request time. Or you can even use conversation scope and add multiple entry points. So I would say Java EE would greatly simplify the code and would be perfectly suited. So there wouldn't be even a problem here. So so funny enough, Java EE would be actually simpler than the implementation. What you of course could do, you can also have a singleton, but wouldn't be that elegant. So so what you would like to do is, you know, to have a request scope bean. This could be this event. You can inject this event or even fire an event, or let's say we're injecting this. And in the post construct method, you will create your date, and this is the date of the starting of the request. This would be the classic example. Of course, there will be lots of workarounds. You could equally well write an interceptor, decorator, or JAX-RS interceptor, but this would be the most elegant and simple solution if I got the problem right. So. No questions. Perfect. No questions. And here, No questions. Perfect audience. Oh. So Hastings is has some very I have to. So the question is it possible to use app server security on REST endpoints? And the answer is this is the only possibility. It is impossible to use something else. So WebSockets rely on the J2E and Java security. In fact, they rely on the standard J2E security. So you have even access to principals or whatever. So the WebSockets are fully integrated with Java security. So thank you, Hastings, for your question. So then the next one. Is the GitHub also down for you? This would be interesting. So everything works on GitHub. So people in the chat, please say, is GitHub down for you or just for me? It is would be interesting to see. Whether my audience killed GitHub. This could be also. You know, everyone wanted to see Porcupine and they just overloaded GitHub. So let's see. Blog. The next one. The next question. So Daniel, I know him from the airhacks workshop. He's an architect. Ask me. Sometimes I say JRebel is great, and sometimes don't use it, or you don't have to use it. And what's the deal with JRebel? And the answer is pretty simple. For me, my applications are rather small, so the deployment times are not an issue. And if this is an issue, I try to simplify the application. This is not always possible. So if I would be involved right now in a huge project, you know, with multiple developers deploying one huge year, which I don't believe in such a project because usually they are just too bloated, but assume I would just involve in such a project, then JRebel will be the perfect solution because JRebel is not only able to replace a class, what JRebel also does is it knows which classes are depending on this class and are able to reload the whole environment. Okay, the next one. How to handle security between my own microservices. And first I tried to think about this, like what it actually means, the question. And as I understood it, you usually have a service. This is which is exposed to the outside world, like say Angular, Ember, or whatever applications are talking to you, to your backend. And this is secured by Java EE. But what you can have behind in the DMZ, you can have nodes. So Java EE application servers we talk to each other, and you could use REST. So the question is what to use, and there are actually multiple options. The most simple answer is because you are behind the firewall, there could be no authentication. So each microservice could talk to another microservice, because what micro usually means, all the microservices comprise one application. So there would be like local call between classes, but just we decided that the classes are remote. We're using REST services for communication between the services, a little bit more coarse-grained than a class between services. And the decision was driven by lifecycle or team structure or whatever. So usually no authentication would be perfectly fine. And what you can use, standard Java EE security, but with standard Java EE security, you would have, in the standard Java EE security, all the application servers would have to use the same security realm, so or a single sign-on solution. And there is an old solution from Sun, for instance, OpenIDM. And what it actually is a proxy of the realm. So all application servers will share the same security information. So you can use something like this, or of course, you can pass a token and store the token somewhere. For instance, the database. This is what we use in the recent project. The token was stored in the database, so you can talk from whatever service you liked. So I would just pass this to chat. I hope the question is answered. So, a simple way to test EJBs. And someone asked me, so actually, there's a question from the chat. So there's a simple way to test EJBs. I answered the question multiple times. Basically, it boils down, there is no overhead. You can use just, EJBs are just POJOs. And if you would like to test them within a container, then you can use Archillion. But in my eyes, Archillion is not needed for the majority of all cases. And by the way, this is the most frequent asked question at the beginning of the testing workshop, and at the end, no one asks again because it's obvious. So Mockito is just needed to mock out the components. It's not needed for testing, and you don't have to mock out EJBs, because they are just POJOs. So usually, I mean, there's no difference between testing an EJB and testing a POJO. What could be harder if you are using the very, very old EJBs, so it was 2003, the 12 years old technology, that could be an issue. But with the more modern, since 2006, you know, this everything which is annotated was at stateless, no difference to testing POJOs. Okay, thank you for the question. Now, the next one. I have the problems that with Whitefly 8.2, it seems that transaction synchronization registry, this is TSR, this is this one, is not propagated to asynchronous call, which would be a buggy actually. So what it actually means, so what I propagated sometimes, or just mentioned in my book, that what you can do, you can use transaction synchronization registry, put to the transaction synchronization registry some data, and whenever you are in the transactions, and transactions happen in synchronous call, you can access the data. And because asynchronous is not synchronous, the data is lost. And particularly, if you look at the documentation at asynchronous EJB, you will find out that asynchronous EJB always start a new transaction. And this is the reason why your data get lost. This is the question from Peter. So this one, so Whitefly behaves actually properly, and Glassfish would also behave properly as well. So the only solution would be to pass it somehow to the server. So can you please set up a little demo to run a debug from NetBeans Java project on Docker? I could, but it's extremely simple. So if you just go, for instance, to the project Porcupine, and I would say debug. So what you will see, it will restart the application server. Oh, this is here. And what you also see is it will search for a port address 8787. So what you will have to do on Docker, you will have to expose the port, the debugging port from the application server to debug your application. So in this part, I'm running now Whitefly in a debug mode. So you will have to expose your port 8787 with the command -p 8787:8787. This is what you will have to do. So it's trivial, and because it's trivial, I won't show it. If there's any problem I'm not aware of, we can talk about, but it should just work. Okay, perfect. Oh, I have the question 2 times. No. So, the question is, most of the application server are able in proprietary way to start nodes for batch processing. And the question is, what additional value JBatch provides on top of this? So someone mentioned, I think the Naresh mentioned that on WebLogic application server, you can start node managers on the fly. So you can process batches. So this JBatch is more flexible. So you are defining the whole pipeline in XML, so you can reconfigure, so you can specify the concurrency, and this is standard. So starting nodes is a WebLogic feature, but it does not have to be supported by all application servers. JBatch is a standard. A standard should be always preferred because it's simpler and better documented, and there are usually more resources on the web than an esoteric solution. So the answer is JBatch is more complete, and it provides the notion of how it's called readers, writers, and the middle thing, something like processors. So you can build your own pipeline, and you can specify now how many pipelines in parallel should be active, which is impossible with usually with application servers. So, and someone watched my Nashorn presentation on my YouTube channel and said, what's my opinion about Groovy? So there was a question from AV Sharel. And if you, I'm seeing, there's what I created, a project called Greenfire. It is long time ago. Yes. And what this project is, I hacked my heating control with the project. Oh, it looks nice. This is interesting. So it changed completely the I'm just in the Jira. So but the project Greenfire, what it was, what it is, I created in 2006. The project Greenfire is intelligent. It is allowed me to remote control my heating. It was 9 years ago, and the whole configuration was Groovy. So I was able to load on the fly Groovy scripts and completely change the behavior of all the algorithms, you know, depending on the sunshine and external temperature and internal temperature. I could choose, you know, to turn on the heater and or turn it off. So it saved, I would say, 10 to 30% of the energy. So it actually was an interesting project, and I use Groovy. And now why I'm using JavaScript or Nashorn right now. And so Groovy first, what you should know, there is a recent event. So Pivotal is the company behind Spring and behind Groovy. They, I think, beginning with March, they stopped supporting the Groovy core developers. So Groovy is going to be I would say not commercially supported project, which doesn't mean anything, but still means that there will be less resources which actively developing Groovy. This was actually not the point why I'm using Nashorn. So Nashorn comes with JDK 1.8, so I can rely on it. And I use Nashorn for JJS, this scripting. And in most of my projects, there is a JavaScript anyway, you know, on the client, usually. So, and I try to minimize the total amount of languages. So I actually don't believe in how it's called polyglot programming, because if you think about this, if every developer in your team would choose a different language, it would be a little bit harder to cooperate. That would be the extreme view, but this is what I try to minimize, actually, the amount of languages. And Java is perfect, and for scripting automation, I just use Nashorn, and I get syntax highlighting, debugging, with NetBeans out of the box. I can even create a library project with there's a terminal support. So it's actually, without any additional plugins, downloads or dependencies, I can use JavaScript. Of course, Groovy is nicer because you can start with Groovy with Java syntax and then make it nicer. And JavaScript is JavaScript. It's like Lisp with Java look, not feel, but with Java look. And Groovy is, of course, nicer for Java developers, but since we have to care about JavaScript as well in most of my projects, this is why I prefer Nashorn. Okay, I want to learn below things. So I got the tweet, JaxRS along with JSON and JaxB, JaxRS and Spring Release, and I should share articles, videos for same. So of course, if you go to Palace, hopefully Palace is up, so please don't crash Palace. There is a course from me, Java Bootstrap, and you get 3 hours video, and with JaxRS, and I built an application from scratch. It is actually similar to the Bootstrap at Munich Airport, but it's online, so there are of course no questions. So this is why it's shorter. I will pass it to the chat. So. And of course, I think on my YouTube channel, I also posted several things which are completely free. I think I had a JaxRS or something. Jax, as you can see, starting with JaxRS client. So there's another video. And by the way, JaxRS and JaxB is probably the simplest possible start to Java EE. So actually, yeah, this is what you can do, and this is I think it is harder to understand the concepts, what makes up a good JaxRS service than learning the Java syntax. And JaxRS and Spring, I don't know whether it is a right combination. As I understand, the Spring people don't like JAX-RS a lot, and therefore they're using Spring MVC as a replacement of JAX-RS. So in the Spring land, I would rather use Spring MVC than mixing Spring with JAX-RS. But and yeah, this is my rough understanding. So now a little bit more involved questions. So it's just like scalability in WebSockets. So so if there are 10,000 people, users, and connecting to one server, what's about the scalability? It boils down the question how it works. And how WebSockets are working is you have one endpoint, which is one instance of the class per server. So there's exactly one. And you can have multiple sessions. And the question is, is this endpoint like a URI, or each user has a different endpoint? And the question is a little bit misleading, but let's say this would be at no effort at all. You have 10,000 users talking with the application server on the same time. But what happens if you would pull a data from the database and send it back to the client? Potentially, you will need to have 10,000 threads, right? So if each user would like to have different information, and 10,000 threads will kill the application server for sure. Of course, you could queue the threads, whatever, but it will be way too slow. And I don't think, I never measured this, but I don't think that this upgrade mechanism here causes any problem. So I actually, Naresh made me curious. I will test a little bit. But what I did, I tested 1,500 concurrent collections. And this was the project Adambin Tunguska. You can look at this. This is an ancient project, so don't use the code. No, ancient, 6 years old. But as I remember, there was a diagram. Here should be a picture, but there was no picture. With my performance measurement, and within the picture, this was from JMeet. As I remember, I tested it with 1,500 clients. I will just post it to the chat. 1,500 clients, and there was actually no impact on the on threading or memory of the application server. Of course, if the application server would have something to say, it would push the information to 1,500 different users. So the answer is, I never tested this, but if I had 10,000 concurrent users, what I would do instead of thinking about this, I would create a simple stress test. It would probably take a half day, and then I have a definite answer, which application server can open how many threads and users. So my question is this one endpoint for all users? There will be one instance of the application server, and on the TCP/IP level, I have actually no idea how it's implemented. But I know the protocol. If you go WebSocket spec, the wire protocol, data framing and so forth, is very well implemented. So specified. So I would just look at this, and then you can probably find out how it should behave. So the next question is the following up question, asynchronous servlet. And the question is how the asynchronous servlet behaves. And the answer is it really depends on the application server. In the later application servers, you know, an atmosphere framework and later, what usually happens if the server blocks, there is no thread waiting. The thread is parked, and you only need threads for processing the algorithms, to processing the data or whatever. So question number 18, second level cache for JPA. Does it says to maintain good amount of RAM memory of the application server? Usually yes. So what are the level? So the first level cache you always need it. So the first, actually there are multiple levels. So what I usually say, I'm counting, you have the 0 level cache, is transactional cache. This is within the transaction. If you invoke entity manager find by ID, I would expect to get still the same reference to the entity all the time. This is the 0 level cache. The first level cache would be the call would be between transactions. The second level cache would be the cache between persistence unit or entity manager instances. And the third level cache would be a distributed cache. This is my numbering, but this is what you could do. Some people start with 1 and some with 0. So so what it actually means, if your cache is going to be distributed, if you would like to use, for instance, Hazelcast for this, you would need less RAM, because Hazelcast will introduce something like sharding. So the data will move across the network for you. So let's say, the customers starting from A to D will be on one node and E to whatever. So this is called consistent hashing. It's an absolutely different story. But if you're interested in this, this is an accident. This is what we will talk in this workshop, persistent distribution, about such algorithms, if you're interested in caching, distribution, or whatever. In this particular case, with Hazelcast, you will need less RAM. If you would use a brute force cache, let's say, which is not distributed, you will need more RAM. By the way, I bought some RAM again for my application server, for my hardware. I'm just upgrading the server, and I think I spent 160 euro for 32 gigabyte of RAM. So it's incredible how cheap it actually gets. Yeah. Okay, I hope I answered the question right. But if you distribute the cache, always the question to know, if you get a cache hit, you will have to go over the network to fetch the entity. And you have the network trip plus the deserialization. What I will check for sure, whether a straight database call is not faster than a distributed network call. So someone observed that I'm using @inject instead of EJBs. Yes, it is simple. I always use @inject instead of EJBs. And I would only use EJBs if @inject doesn't work anymore. What it actually means, I need specific or additional information like JNDI name, remote interfaces name, and so forth. And I get the question multiple times. People are waiting for Java 7-like real-world Java applications reloaded. I like the title, actually, reloaded. If I would write a book, I would completely rename it. Otherwise, I get issues on Amazon again. They're merging all my books to one book, and I got all the reviews, Like the very first book, I think 9 years ago, I got comments like, the content is okay, but the formatting is not quite right. And I then fixed the formatting 3 years ago, but it's still the old comments. So what is the answer? I didn't even start it to write a book, but I have lots of ideas. So either I will write a new book or rewrite the old one, but they are still okay. So from the contents, absolute, state of the art. So there is no JBatch, for instance, described, but the architecture. But even funnier, what I did in this book, in this Java E patterns and the Java E night hacks, I actually describe microservices without knowing it. So in the blue book, actually the X-Ray project is a microservice, but back then there was no such buzzword. Okay, and I get one reaction, one comment here, and this was whether EJBs become dependent. No, what they are injecting is the proxy, and the proxy could be depending. So what you get is one proxy per instance, but the EJBs are dispatched depending on load. So EJBs are not scoped, except session scoped stateful session beans. Okay. And now I got one question in chat. What do you suggest for JAX-RS documentation? I suggest Swagger. SWAGGER is perfect. Just use it. But I never use Maven. Never use the JAX-RS extension. Just write the JSON statements per hand. It's easier, faster, and no external dependencies. So and now, oh man, this is. When communicated with the enterprise firewall with other J applications via JAX-RS, is it best to share the service interface model, classes via jar, with the JREST consumer, or is it generally better to have the clients manage their own model classes to consume the endpoint? And this is a very interesting question. So wait a second, I will sure do something like this so you can watch the question, read the question. And the answer is more about politics. So if you provide the stubs, it looks like you also take the responsibility for the stub implementations, like the JAX-RS dependency, whatever. and which is really hard to assure. And what I would say in JAX-REST, I wouldn't do this. I would just expose JAX-REST interface and they be consumed in whatever fashion the others developers like to. And just giving them the business delegates or the stubs is like, you know, providing a goodwill to them. Start with this, but leave me alone from now. Because what you will also have to do if you provide them the stubs, you will also have to care about life cycles. So you have, you know, have to push them to upgrade to take the newest stubs, and you gave them the version 1.0 and you are now already in version 2.0. So you will have to try to move them to use your recent step. And with just plain JAX-RS, you are just more, how it's called, more flexible and agile. I hate the word agile, more flexible. Okay, no hate, it's just overused. Okay, any questions? If not, we are in 50 minutes, 18 questions is quite good. Is there a simple application architecture to see how to start with microservices? Yes, whatever I talked in the recent 2 years was a microservice. So what a microservice is in my eyes is a simple focus application developed by a small team according to the Conway law. So small team produces small war. So you get a very thin application. This is what we actually did for several years. And in one point of time, you will have to split this war in multiple wars for unknown reasons, and you get then microservices. So microservices for me is not top down. Hey, we would like to have microservices and now create 50 wars and distribute them. So for me, it's more like is a conscious decision. Now we have, unfortunately, we have to split, you know, our beautiful war into multiple smaller wars. And because of some trade-offs like lifecycle, whatever, we have to use microservices. For me, is microservices not a feature? It's more like, you know, an answer to a requirement. Yeah, lifecycle. This is actually what in my current project we are using microservice architectures, but my developers don't know it. So I never mentioned microservices. We just decided to do this, and yeah, we're building what we always built: small wars deployed on multiple application servers. Now even we started with Docker, but yeah, in one point of time I will mention we have microservices, but no one actually cares. Yes, Swagger plus CXF. This is what the chat said. But again, probably I will record one session about this. So I again, don't use the Maven plugin because you will have to use strange annotations to annotate your JAX-REST resources, and don't use, I forgot, they have another way to extend from JAX-REST application. Look just at what the plugin generates and the JSON. This is very, very simple. You can fairly easy create with one file per get, post, put, delete, or whatever per method a JSON file, and this works just well. And it worked perfectly for me. And thankfully, microservices, JAX-REST services are not that fine grained, so you don't end up having, you know, 500 REST calls. It is actually usually a few calls per war. So the question is from Abdullah Ziz. I hope it was spelled right. What is the alternative of WebSocket in asynchronous client server? In asynchronous client server, alternative WebSocket is long polling JAX-RS. Very simple to implement. I think even showed this multiple times in the airhacks TV in my YouTube channel. So look at this. There would be properly long polling. And in the project Porcupine, if you go to the sample application, I combined JAX-RS with thread pools and completable future, which this is what you can get. And of course, don't forget JMS. JMS is still a very interesting protocol, and with servers like or most of the application servers, you can replace the protocols. And even in case of Whitefly, you can use AMQP or Stomp. So very fancy protocols. Wow, now the chat woke up. I use Archelion to test my database and persistence logic and test the cascade configuration of my entities. Do you have another alternative? Of course I have. So I will type this to everyone. So to the chat actually. So persistence create entity manager, and IT dot create entity manager factory, create entity manager, and then em get entity transaction. And these are 2 lines of code where you get where you can boot your persistence without you can test your persistence without booting Archillion. And on that note, if you go here and you search for Maven project from archetype, com airhacks. Oh, it's not synchronized yet. Maven project from archetype. Yes, com airhacks. So didn't fetch the Maven definition yet, but if you there will be a archetype called BCE archetype, and with this you will also what I did, I implemented integration tests with without Archillion, and I use Archillion for different purposes. But the oh, now it fetched from the internet. This is the BCE archetype. And you say persistence. So do this at home and you get the answer. So what you will see, how to test EJBs without Archillion and with JUnit test, and how to test persistence without Archillion with entity manager, and how to test I don't know what I tested, but I tested something with Archillion as well. There's actually all possible tests here. So, and there would be one module called persistence, and this open and look at this. Okay. Perfect. No questions? No questions? Then I would say thank you, good night to you, or good morning. I would be actually interested in which time zone you are living. So for me, it's almost good night. And see you in 1 month or on upcoming conferences. Workshops, so there are a new bunch of airhacks at Munich Airport in March and in May, and the microservices was just overflown, I would say. So got lots of questions about microservices, and yeah, and or even projects. And I have some ideas. So actually, the question how to test WebSockets made me curious, and probably a new open source project could arise from this. But yeah, see you next month. Bye.